The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
All right, well, welcome to Meet the Author. My name is Joe Nash. Today we're talking again to Colonie resident Phil Pisani, and his new book is called The Making of Perfect Soldiers, the sequel to Maggie's Wars. I talked to Phil last year. This is his other book, Maggie's Wars. This is a sequel, so welcome back, Phil.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me.
So before we talk about the new book, it's a sequel. I just wanted to ask you, how did Maggie's Wars end up doing? You're saying it was pretty successful.
Well, it's not New York Times bestseller list, but I'm happy with the sales.
Okay, yeah.
I'm hoping the sequel will also, maybe piggyback more sales with the original.
Well, in your books, the interesting thing about the books, you've created two compelling characters, Maggie and Johnny, and you've written this in the first person. You've written from both points of view, male and female. We talked about that last time, but why don't we start there? What was the response to, your book? You were writing half from the male point of view and half from the female. What was the response to a lot of that?
I'd say 70% liked it. I should say 70%. Mostly everybody liked it. There was only a few people who didn't like the shifting point of view, because on the jacket cover, it looked like it was just written from her point of view.
Okay.
And then once they started reading it, they were surprised that it was also a male point of view. But for the most part, the people liked the shift. And I think we talked last time. I thought that it created a more dramatic overview of the whole novel when you do something like that.
And the other thing I commented last time, and you continue this, you have this sort of hard-boiled noir style, I guess you could say. Reminds me of Ross MacDonald and Robert Parker. So people watching, if you like those two authors, you'll like Phil's writing. So this book, the last book ends in end of World War II. This book, it carries Johnny and Maggie through Korea, the Hungarian Revolution, and the Vietnam War. So why don't you talk a little bit about why you're continuing the characters and
originally
I think originally you were telling me this is one book.
The original manuscript was one book. So the publisher that I had that published Maggie's Wars wanted me said it was too long for a first-time author to be published, and we had a few battles and discussions about it. But in the end, it was you have to either chop the whole story down to 75,000, 80,000 words, or we're not going to go ahead with it. Or what they suggested was to do two books and a sequel.
Okay.
So that's exactly what I did.
Okay. So this book, why don't you tell us a little bit? You can recap from last time. The genesis for not just the characters, but the incidents. You knew a retired. Just tell a little story a little bit so people know where you're.
About 10 years ago, it was. I was just a co-author of a published book called From Heroin to Heresy, and as that came out, my brother was going to school in upstate college. And one of his professors had read the book and asked him if that he wanted to meet me. I had no idea why he wanted to meet me, but we arranged a meeting. I went up to his house to meet him, and when I walked into the house, his house, he sat down, poured us a cognac, and I'm looking in the living room, and he had all these medals all over the wall displayed on a wall, and he says, "These are my medals. I was a battlefield commissioned officer at the end of World War II. I then worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency, and then ultimately into the CIA." This is what he told me. And then he started telling me all these events that happened that really people had had no idea that they actually happened. And
None of them were in the news, were they?
not very well publicized,
Yeah.
and a lot of them were buried, especially about the liberation of Dachau.
Yeah.
Subsequently, since my book, I've seen a couple stories come out that that even though my book's fiction, a lot of it's based on some historical fact. So he told me these harrowing events that he was in. The assassination of Che Guevara, the parachuting into Cambodia during the war, the liberation of Dachau in World War II, Korea, training people in Korea. And he also told me about the event in Dachau that there was a female war correspondent there that really knew the whole story, and they want to let her publish it, and eventually they got her too. And I didn't know what to. I didn't know whether to believe him or not. So he says, "Well, you want to write a story with something like that?" I said, "Well, fiction or nonfiction. I mean, nonfiction, you're going to be, He says, "Well, I don't want anybody to know who I am."
Did you sense he was wanting you to maybe tell some of these stories?
He wanted to get a lot off his mind.
And he suggested fiction.
No, I suggested fiction. I didn't want to write I didn't know where it would go, and plus I didn't know the veracity of it either, the truth of it as well. So after I researched it, what he was telling me was true, and it was in a lot of the information I found, especially about Dachau, was like way in the upward stacks of Binghamton University. Not even books out of print.
Okay, and then that's how you created Maggie, the character.
And that created Maggie, which was a more of an amalgamation of several female war correspondents.
Okay, so I guess I should say for your new book here, The Making of Perfect Soldiers, I should start by saying, when we last left Maggie and Johnny, this starts out in Korea, and there's an incident in here of, am I saying this right? No gunnery.
No gunnery.
Now that didn't come to light till the 1990s,
yes,
right? All right. So why don't you tell how you incorporated?
Because of this, because of the other events, the liberation of Dachau that nobody really paid much attention. It was more of a big liberation than really the nuts and bolts of what really happened there. Same thing in Korea, where I remember in the 90s where they came out and it says, wow, the United States didn't do a very nice thing here when they strafed all the people underneath the bridge. Most of them are old men, women, and children. So I thought that would also add to the drama of the fiction, incorporating that historical event with.
Well, you have, like I say,
Maggie.
the thing that makes it interesting, you have your character Maggie, the war correspondent, who witnesses it and wants to write about it, and then you have Johnny, who's kind of working for the CIA.
CIA at that time.
And he can't tell anything.
He's saying you can't say anything, and the same thing happened in Dachau in the first book. So she has these two main stories that she's wrestling with that she wants to really get out and tell the truth of what happened, and the government won't let her.
Okay.
And in those days, censorship was, not until I think My Lai Massacre, really, that the United States finally was able to tell things that really happened in war. And like I tried to point out, that wars, there's bad guys that you're fighting, but once war really starts, there's no good guys or bad guys.
Well, sometimes fiction, I think it goes back to what Aristotle, truth can have, or fiction can have truth in it, even though it's made up. So
yes.
You put that in there. What I wanted to ask you was you have some cameo appearances. I think General MacArthur's in here.
Yep.
The female photographer, is it Shepard? Is that based on
Ricky Shepard?
Is that a real person?
Yeah, it's based on Dickie Chappelle.
Okay, so
Dickie Chappelle was also she was a photojournalist. Okay. World War II photojournalist, started out at Iwo Jima. Had the same problems as Maggie did in a man's world, that they didn't want her on the battlefields.
Yeah.
and she did a lot of filming in Iwo Jima, and then again in Korea, and then
So Maggie meets. There's a little scene where Maggie meets her.
Maggie meets her on the plane. Yeah.
So,
Yes.
what do you think? You have a very compelling style. The story you really give a good sense of sort of the what do you call it? The frustrations and the chaos of in the beginning here with all this going on. You give a good sense of that. What's your I don't know why. What's your writing style? Like how would you describe it? You like to tell these. It's really compelling the way you get it going here.
You mean how do I do it? It just comes out of me. It comes out of me. I don't know.
It does. Okay.
Yeah, it's just
You said you like.
There's a lot of times when I'm stuck, I'll hit the heavy bag and something just pops into my mind. So I mean, it's one of those.
I should say on your webpage there was a picture of you boxing on the.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I noticed about your book, and the other one too. This goes back to talking about the 2 points of view, male and female. The Maggie sections are longer than the Johnny sections. Is that? Did you enjoy it? Did you like telling her story more, or does it just work out that way?
I think it worked out that way. Once you sit down and write, and you're writing the character, and you get into the character's frame of mind, or the frame of mind that you want the character to be in, you write until you stop.
Yeah.
And sometimes hers flowed easier for me than Johnny. Johnny was tough. Johnny's a tough neighborhood type guy, like where I grew up, and I didn't want Johnny to be. I didn't want to put too much of me into him.
Okay.
And I wanted to create a real.
I know
character.
I know. Last time you said you're from Endicott, New York, and
yes.
It's funny on your webpage. You're sort of a what do they say? Blue collar working class guy. On your webpage it says you're from the north side of the tracks. Is that because you didn't want to say you were from the wrong side of the tracks?
They used to say, no, we were from the north side of the tracks. The north side of the tracks were all the hills were. At the tracks are where the factories were. So where the hills, the north side, are all hilly, and all people's houses were there, the workers' houses. They used to come down the hill and work in the factories.
And I remember
that was on the north side. The south side of the tracks where all the bankers lived.
And I remember that you said your mother was a librarian, and you were a big reader, even though you were
avid reader. Yeah, even though I was a fighter.
Even though you're from the tough side there.
Yes.
So after the Korean the book is there's 3 sections here. You got the Korean. I only got to the Korean section, and then what are the other 2? She goes. Johnny and Maggie end up at the Hungarian Revolution.
No, Johnny, Maggie meets Ricky, and she's saying, "Listen, she's distraught. She thinks Johnny's dead, and she's having this big love issue. Whether and Ricky's telling her, you're a journalist. You don't have time for love. If you want to reach your goals, report these things. You got to go. You're not husband material, more or less." So she says, "I'm going to Hungary. There's going to be a revolution. There's going to be big time."
Okay.
So she goes there. That's Dickie Chappelle actually went there.
Okay.
Margaret Higgins never went there.
But you had Maggie go to.
Yeah, I wanted to have
1956.
Yeah, because I wanted to have Maggie explain the things that happened to Ricky, who's based on Dickie, which really happened to Dickie. She was imprisoned. And,
all right, and then so how does where does Johnny in that part?
No, Johnny at that time, she doesn't even know he's alive at that point.
Oh.
And then she finds out
again. Because it happened at the.
Well, then they meet. In Korea at the No Gun Re incident.
Okay, right. That's what you're saying. All right. So then that's the middle section, and then you sort of foreshadow.
Johnny crashes. He ends up in Siberian prison camp.
Oh, okay.
I didn't get that far.
I didn't get to that.
Oh, okay, yeah. That was right after Hungary.
I got to page 70.
Yeah.
I'm interviewing 3 people this week. I got too many books to read.
Yeah, I know. God bless you. Thank you.
So, and then the last third of the book, she ends up in the Vietnam, the beginning part, right?
The beginning part of Vietnam when they're advisors, when Diem, just before Diem was assassinated, and during the assassination, and just before Kennedy was assassinated.
And then, is it? I didn't get to that part. But is it the same kind of idea? She comes across things she can't write about, or
No, but there's really a climax between what she really wants to get things written. Marguerite Higgins wrote a book, Our Vietnam Nightmare. Nobody wanted her to write it again because she didn't think we belonged there.
Oh, okay.
So there was a issue on that, but these other issues were, this is a fictional part of it, that she really wanted to get this No Gun Ree story out and this Dachau story out and everything else throughout the book that she wanted to get out and tell the real story about things. And, and the CIA and the upper echelon of the government didn't want her to write it. So the climax is...
So, Maggie's a very interesting character. What do you think drives her? Because you're writing about a woman at a time where there weren't that many.
I think the research of all the women were this ambition and goal to be heard, and to show that they can do the same thing a man can do.
This is in
this was the time when they weren't.
Yeah.
Most of the war correspondents were men.
Okay. And now, in your response to the first book, and hopefully this one, have you heard from both male and female readers?
Yes.
What are the differences? What do they say? Or
the female readers, the majority of them don't like Maggie. Okay. The first book. Yeah. I think they're going to like her in the second book.
And what about the male?
They all like Johnny better. I don't know.
Well,
the male readers. They just like the story on whole. I got really great reviews from all most of my male readers.
Well, I like Maggie a lot. She's a good
I did
character.
too. I did. I was surprised that females said that.
Oh, okay.
But I've been to a lot of women. Female writers groups, and they invariably said that. We don't really like Maggie. They all said that. I was going, oh.
Now, I know, I think you told me this one time I saw the library. Did you go to, was there a book group or something that read your book and you went to it and talked to the group?
Yes.
Oh, how did that go?
It was fun.
Was it mainly women or men? Because I know a lot of book groups are mainly women for some reason. And
no, they were women. A couple of them I went to. They were all women.
And did they have the same response? They didn't really like Maggie too much?
They didn't like Maggie.
All right. Well, I'm going to tell people that Maggie's a good character.
I do too. And I think they're going to like her throughout the second novel. Yeah. She becomes more human and less ambitious and more. She's still ambitious and she's still driven, but she becomes, I want to say, more human or more wrestling with her inside, with her inner feelings about love and about responsibility and also getting the truth out. So she's wrestling with that throughout the whole.
Well, I know in
sequel.
In the book we're talking about here today, in the beginnings. Somewhere she says something like, "Well, I don't have time for love or something." Or,
right.
The other guy, when she thought Johnny was dead, she was thinking of seeing or something. Yeah. So, what are you working on next? I'm
working on a book called The Sins of Liberty.
So, are you done with these characters?
Somebody just came to me and said, "Why don't you do another sequel on?" Well, I'm not going to. I don't want to
give it away.
Yeah. So they want me to do it. Somebody, but I don't know. I'm concentrating on The Sins of Liberty, which is about a Mexican migrant worker who becomes he finds out that the American dream isn't really what the American dream's all cracked up to be. Gets in a lot of trouble with the law. Tries to get back to Mexico, and he hooks up with an old Vietnam era veteran who at the Woodstock site. He meets him at the Woodstock. It takes place in the Catskill region.
So your book takes place in 1969?
No, not 1969.
Not the Woodstock, the concert.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's a
early 90s, but the Vietnam era veteran is going back to Woodstock because before he went to the Woodstock Festival, and several days later he was drafted into the Army and went to Vietnam. So they hook up, and he helps him try to get back to. Reunited with his wife and back to Mexico.
Okay, so you like writing these suspense thriller kind of
Yeah,
kind of things,
yes.
as opposed
Yeah,
to
that's my genre, I guess.
what kind of books do you?
Well, I started out historical fiction, and I was belonged to historical fiction clubs, and they says, well, historical, they have this tenet that historical fiction, you can't write historical fiction if you lived in the era. Or it's got to be at least 100 years old. So,
Who says
these
that?
historical fiction clubs, historical fictionista, there's all these historical clubs, and my son and I had arguments with them. We're saying we're basing the fiction on historical events. Why wouldn't it be historical fiction? So because it doesn't fall in the parameters of that of these years. So.
I think you should stick with your style, Phil.
I'm going to stick with my style. I'm not going to let them tell me.
All right, so I'm sorry. So the new book, and it's
This isn't interesting. My son's in the film industry in Chicago.
Okay.
And so he wants. I'm also doing a script on it. So we want to finish the script and maybe do a Kickstarter. See if we can get producers that can grab both the book and the.
all right, so you're working on a script for your next book out.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what about? Has there been any interest? Your two characters, Maggie and Johnny. This would make a nice little.
I've had people that have read the book but haven't gotten back with me.
Okay.
So a couple producers, a couple of nice ones. Not big. More independent. Type producers, but historical movies. If you've seen Unbroken, or they're big money movies because of any period pieces. It costs money to make.
Yeah, I think the historical books like Unbroken, they're very, very popular these days. So you think you're going to stick with historical fiction your way, or is it?
I'm going to stick with. Yeah, I mean, I just won't call it historical fiction. I guess I can call it contemporary fiction.
All right, so you got the two Maggie books.
Yes.
Your book. When's the next one coming out?
I'm rewriting it now,
okay.
and then we're going to see what happens.
And then what else? Do you have anything else planned?
I have
down.
Well, I've written screenplays throughout my career as well. And one of the ones that I really like is called The Big Barbecue. It's about the Appalachian Convention because there's a lot of people that I know.
Oh, you mentioned that last time about when the mafia guys had a big meeting.
Had a big meeting, and the kids, the children went up there. These 12-year-olds skipped school, and they wanted to go see their mafia heroes in that sense, because everybody, at that age, when we grew up, the mafia guys were like the Old West cowboys, the gunfighters and everything. That's what we thought. But the movie that I wrote, that they find out that that's really not the truth. That really that the parents are the real heroes of their lives.
Have you thought about making that a novel, or do you just
Yes, I have.
Okay, I think that would be.
The good part about it is that I had the script, and the script could be a perfect framework for a novel. It wouldn't be, you can really, and the dialogue is. If I say so myself, the dialogue is really good.
Now, you said the main characters are like around 12.
Yeah.
Well,
coming of age type.
Well, a big genre these days is this young adult. They call it YA.
Young adult YA, yeah.
A lot of famous authors are now writing YA books. Like even like James Patterson, and before Robert Parker died, he wrote a few. I don't know, maybe you should investigate the YA.
I think it would be a great YA book, yes, without a doubt.
All right, well, thanks for coming back, Phil. We really appreciate it. I just want to tell people Phil's new book, The Making of Perfect Soldiers, the sequel to Maggie's Wars. We have copies in the library, but you can also get them at Amazon. And your website, we can put on the screen here, it's philpisani.com. It's got some information about you. And I was going to say, your book's very compelling, great characters. And I think, you remind me of Robert Parker, the writing, who's one of my all-time favorites. So thanks for coming in. And
thanks for having me.
I wish you a lot of success. And when your other book comes out, come back. And
I certainly will.
And if you turn the other book into a YA book, come back again.
Yes,
all right, so that's Phil, Making of Perfect Soldiers. The sequel, I'll throw your other one up so people can read this one first if they want, Maggie's Wars. Phil Pisani, thanks.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time on Meet the Author.